This is Corella McLean from welcome.com. Sometimes we call ourselves Welcome Network, or we call ourselves PDNs. We call ourselves iStudyCards.com. We have a network of names and sites. Okay, so what am I here for today? I'm here to talk to you about grammar. A lot of people think that when I say the word grammar, it's almost saying like a curse word, but it's not. What grammar allows you to do is to communicate effectively, right? So therefore, if you want to speak to someone, you're able to do so in a way that you don't have to constantly be explaining what you're trying to say, because you're not actually saying what you actually want to say. Right? So one of the best ways to learn grammar, first of all, is to relax and to understand that grammar is not a bad word. I'm really sorry for a lot of people that when you were in first, second, third, and fourth grade, your teacher didn't teach grammar as something that was practical, something that you would need for the rest of your life. They teach you mathematics, 1 + 1 = 2, 2 + 2 = 4, and they tell you you're going to do this for the rest of your life, so learn it now, get it into your memory bank, and have it there. Where grammar is looked upon as something abstract, something over there. So if you're out of school for a couple of years, you'll say, well, I don't remember grammar that well because, you know, I haven't been in school for that while. And I say to my students, you haven't been in first and second grade for a long time, but you still remember how much 1 + 1 is, and 2 + 2, and 5 × 7, and so on. Grammar is something that you use each and every day. In fact, you use grammar more than you use mathematics. So what am I talking about when I'm talking about grammar? First of all, grammar is broken down. It's a tool, first of all, I should say it's a tool that we use, so that what I'm saying is what you are understanding. So we're not at crosshairs, we're not at cross points, right? But how do you go about teaching grammar? Or how do you go about learning grammar so that it's something that you can get a hold of? First of all, you have to look at something called parts of speech. So let's look at the word grammar. All right. And then we're talking about parts of speech. And you probably remember hearing this, but maybe not remembering exactly what it is. So let's look at parts of speech. Well, first you have, and I'm putting this in order of importance, verbs. So first, verbs. Right? And I'm going to explain, I'm going to go into more details about verbs when I finish listing the grammar, the parts of speech, excuse me. Second, nouns. Third, pronouns. Fourth, adjectives. Fifth, adverbs. Sixth, prepositions. 7, conjunctions. And then 8, interjections. So these are the parts of speech in English, Spanish, Portuguese. Okay, now how you do it in these different languages, French, Portuguese, Spanish, German, is different perhaps. But all of this is what makes up grammar in English or at least many of the Western languages. Verbs, nouns, pronouns, adjectives, adverbs, prepositions, conjunctions, interjections. All right? Now, one thing that's extremely important to understand, you can have nouns, pronouns, adjectives, adverbs, prepositions, conjunctions, interjections in your sentence. And they can be placed exactly the way they're supposed to be placed. They can be sophisticated and everything. But if you do not have a verb in your sentence, guess what you don't have? You don't have a sentence. What you have, a string of words, very pretty, very sophisticated perhaps, but not a sentence. Because one of the first things you have to realize is the following. When you are putting all these things together, all these parts of speech together, what are you trying to do? You're trying to express an idea. Now, sometimes it's a fragment because it's a fragment, although I don't know the answer, comma, but you don't stop there. That's a fragment. That's it. Or should I say it's a dependent clause, because you have to understand that that can't just hang out there. Although I don't know the answer, comma. Because now you have to put the rest of the sentence. And it can have all of these, but if it doesn't have this, a verb. So one of the first things you have to realize this, that the most important part of speech is the verb. And that's what I'm going to emphasize here, the verbs. Now, what's a verb? Well, depending, it can be an action word. Action. I'm going to write it in the form that's called the infinitive. To talk, that's an action. To eat, that's an action. To sleep, that's an action. And since I'm here, let me just state that when I say to and the verb, to and the verb, to and the verb, this form of the verb is called the infinitive. There's other forms of the verb, but when I'm talking about the verb, I normally write it in the infinitive form. But this is not the only kind of verb that exists. There's a verb of state, of being. So let me just put them. And the most important, you have become, to become, but the most important verb when you're talking about state of being is the verb to be, the verb that we use more than any other verb, by far. This is one of the most important verbs in the English language. So what I'm going to do is we're going to look at verbs, what they are, and why they are so important. Because without the verb, there is no sentence. All you have is a group of words that really make no sense. Oh, and one more thing. I used to always say to my students, okay, so you can't have a sentence without a verb. Can you have a sentence with only a verb? They think. No, of course not. You must have other words, other parts of speech. But if I say to you, sit. If I say to you, eat, do you know what I want from you? No, it's not the best way. But if you're angry at your child maybe, or you're angry at someone, or if you're just giving a command and you say, sit, eat, go, come, you understand what's wanted. And if you understand what I want, that's a complete idea. I'm able to just use the verb, and the verb is enough so that you are able to understand. So the answer is yes. Just a sentence can contain only the verb. Come here. Get up. sit down. Okay, so once again, let me just go over this, and in the next video we're going to go into much more detail on what's a verb. So we're talking about grammar. To understand grammar, to break it down so you don't try to eat it in one or swallow it in one swoop. Parts of speech. When you're talking about parts of speech, you have verbs, the most important part of speech. Without it, there is no idea. Nouns, pronouns, adjectives, adverbs, prepositions, conjunctions, interjections. The most important part of the parts of speech, verb. A verb is an action word, such as to talk, to eat, to sleep. The to plus the verb is the infinitive form of the verb. We're going to go into all of that, understanding what the infinitive form of the verb is, the simple form of the verb is, the present participle of the verb, the past participle of the verb. All of those things are very important to understand. Then you talk about, first you talking about a verb being an action word, then state of being, right? And the most important verb that represents this type of verb is the verb to be. And just one more thing. If you're talking about the present tense of the verb, that is when you're talking about what you normally do, right? These verbs, to talk, to eat, to sleep, are regular. Remember when your teacher would talk about regular verbs? And the verb, one of the most important, if not the most important verb in the English language, to be, is irregular. In our next video, we're going to look at the difference between regular and irregular forms of verbs, tenses. So once again, this is Corella Fickman McLean from Welcome. And see how we spell welcome? W-Y-L, not W-E. WYLCOME.com. We're also known as Pedians, P-E-D-I-A-N-S, iStudyGuides.com. So thank you very much, and see you in the next video.